Sevan, I want to move on to you and talk about observations you've seen. I mean, you've been in this industry for a few years now. Why do you think some of these end user industries are embracing drones at the rate they are?
Yeah, I think some of that was already covered by Darshan and others. Obviously, safety is a big one. We had a session a couple of days ago as part of AUVSI Exponential, and Darshan was part of that panel. And I put Darshan and the gentleman from Ohio DOT on the spot. And one of the things that really stood out was safety. For example, for bridge inspection, something that had to be done with humans, now you could do with drones, or inspecting turbines. So to me, that theme really stood out, safety. Now, obviously, you're augmenting processes that can be done faster with drones, and you add analytics to it. Can be much faster, automated, whether it's asset inspection or even inventorying. That's something we've seen DoD embrace. DoD by law has to count number of assets they have on a base. And right now they do it in a manual fashion. So if there's a way, obviously there is a way, you can use drones to count those assets and using machine learning, automatically count those and report it. That makes it much more efficient and cost effective. And then you add other IoT devices, satellites, and now it becomes very powerful, right? Whether it's in a base environment, in a city environment, in a campus environment. So safety definitely stood out, but obviously, as some of you guys mentioned, cost effectiveness, efficiency has been a key from what we've seen. We've done some work for power and utility companies. They're using drones to inspect power lines to prevent wildfires, which again, a lot cheaper than using helicopters, a lot safer and faster than using humans. So that's something that, again, safety comes to mind in addition to efficiency.
Great. Thanks, Sevan. So we're here today to talk about drones, where the money is. Let's move into that very topic. So what I want to ask the panelists is, right now, which industry do you see implementing drones at the fastest rate? But more importantly, as a second part of this question, which sector do you think is going to be able to provide the most jobs for drone operators? Sevan, let's get back to you. Let's start with you.
That's a good question. As a consulting company, and I'm not trying to not answer your question directly, but we look at this at the macro level and looking at not just the jobs you have today, such as pilots, but what are all the indirect jobs that this industry is creating, right? So the training piece is a big piece. Counter UAS has emerged as its own industry. UAM. Now people are talking about vertiports for flying cars and taxis. Vertiports need people, need engineers, need people that work in the security line for the vertiport. So I think for us, looking at this at a macro level and looking at what are all the indirect jobs that are created through this industry. So not having just a specific lens on, okay, drone operators. Obviously, that's a big part of it, and you'll have a lot of drone operators, but you need people to provide training. You need law enforcement, hire more law enforcement to understand the risk that the drones pose to critical infrastructure. You need analytics, right? So for us, I think we see a wave of jobs that's going to be created through this drone industry. But again, it's not just drones. When you talk about drones, you're talking about urban air mobility, you're talking about inspecting, remote sensing, you're talking about delivering things. So for us, it's more of a macro level, and we're seeing all kinds of sectors kind of rally around this drone industry, right? Again, you guys know, from policy to analytics to operations to O&Ms, OEMs, OEM companies. So I didn't give you a specific answer because for us, this is a very much evolving industry, and we're trying to figure out, trying to get a sense of where it goes. But one thing we have noticed is that a lot of states are looking at the drone industry from an economic impact lens and how they can bring the drone industry to their states, making their states become leaders in this space so they can attract jobs to the region. And they come to us and they ask us, well, how does that work? How do we bring jobs to the state? Do we need to have a test site? Do we need to bring manufacturing companies? And that's something we're working with them on to figure out that answer. But again, the last thing I'll say is it's an ecosystem view. It's not just the drone, it's everything else that supports that ecosystem, the operators, the trainers, the manufacturers, the traffic management that goes with it, communication. So a long answer to say it's an ecosystem view. We really see a lot of components and industries coming together to enable this market.
Sevan, you brought up a very good point. And, you say you didn't answer the question, but you actually did in a very, key way. And it's not just UAS operators, it's consultants, market analytics, attorneys. There are various jobs that are being created as a result of this expanding industry. And, that's an interesting way to look at it, and one that I really hadn't thought about. You're absolutely right. For people operating in various traditional jobs, the drone industry might offer a kind of new niche to go into. I know for me, there aren't that many drone attorneys in the country, and 3 years ago, I was not a drone attorney. So the point I'm making is that this niche is kind of presenting itself, and it raises all kinds of opportunities for various kinds of professionals. Charles, I'm going to ask you the same question. What industry do you see right now? And I know you're centered in the public safety emergency response agency. I guess I can tailor this to you and say, how do you see public safety agencies embracing this technology at a very quick rate? And if so, is that embracing of this industry creating jobs in the public safety sector?
So yes, it is. It is growing very quick, and this will relate back to the study reference you made earlier. In 3 years, we've seen us go from probably 3 standardized use cases: damage assessment, search and rescue, traffic crash reconstruction. They were the early opportunities to use drones. We now found out from our survey that public safety is using drones for more than 17 use cases. In fact, when we were talking to Canada, Winnipeg, Canada, during the AUVSI symposium, we heard from them saying, we're using drones in almost every aspect of our public safety operations. So we're using them in advance of hazmat entry. We're using them indoor for searching buildings for law enforcement to keep them out of harm's way. And it goes back to what was said earlier by Sevan, is that safety becomes a big feature here. Is we know that we've had hundreds of lives documented, saved, but we're also seeing that firefighters, police officers, search and rescue people, emergency managers, and others are actually being able to operate safer. So what's happening is we're having a lot more agencies move forward with public safety UAS programs. Right now, the jobs that you're referencing are specific to people that are already police officers or firefighters, probably 99% of the time. So they're collateral duties. However, we're starting to see some transition. And one example is FDNY, where they now have a separate division of robotics, which includes both ground and air robots. So I think you're going to start seeing, as the use changes and it becomes more prevalent, you're going to start seeing more dedicated resources. And I think that becoming a drone operator is going to be an enhancement should you want to be a police officer, or you want to be a firefighter, or you want to go into emergency management, because now you have this other talent and aspect of bringing value to the organization. But there's a lot of movement in public safety.
Thanks, Charles. And, I want to comment real quickly on that survey that you mentioned. Drone responders put out a survey basically asking how COVID-19 has been impacting operations. And the results were quite surprising. I don't mean to keep delaying the answer, but our next question talks directly about COVID-19. So Charles and I will definitely talk a little bit more about that in a second. Adam, let's go to you. So you monitor this industry. Where are you seeing jobs being created?
Well, like others have mentioned, I think there's 2 aspects to this. There's the operators and the ancillary services. I think on the ancillary services piece, I think security is going to be a key one, particularly as there are more users in the airspace, and some of them possibly violating the rules, maybe even unintentionally. So I think security is an important one. I think also with kind of the overall growth in the industry, there's going to be a real need for maintenance or for adapting equipment for different use cases. So I think that's going to be another important one. In terms of sectors, I think it's really important to look at kind of where kind of the economy currently is and kind of where it's growing. And kind of right now in the low interest rate environment that we're seeing, we're seeing a really big growth in both existing home sales and new construction. So I think on the real estate side, particularly on the residential side, there's a lot of opportunity for growth there. I also think that with COVID-19, we're seeing a lot of use cases for the delivery of testing, the delivery of pharmaceuticals, adding sensors to try to detect temperatures. Some use cases which are even controversial, but I think COVID-19 has kind of raised awareness of the disaster relief use cases, and with climate change and other things going forward, I don't think that's I think that's going to be a continued focus area.
Thanks, Adam. And we're going to talk more about those drone deliveries in a second. I'm actually sitting in a hotel room because of drone deliveries. I'll explain more about that in a second. So Darshan, of course, let's go to you on this. Where are you seeing jobs being created in this industry?
So based on everyone else's answers, the point that I want to try and make is that, so we have to break this into two things. One is the drone industry, that is, you can call the unmanned systems industry, and then the drone jobs, that is drone pilots. If you're looking at the industry, Sevan already answered that there's so many opportunities for engineers, doctors, even doctors are in the picture, there's lawyers and all to get into it. So the industry as a whole has a lot of opportunities coming, but drone jobs is different. Coming from a state and local government side, one of the biggest things I will first talk at the state and local government side. They're not trying to hire new people, they're trying to train the people that already exist. So are you creating jobs? I don't think so. You're just creating opportunity for the current workforce to, either take up new tasks or even get paid more. So that is the way state and local governments prefer, is people who already have a background in what they're doing. Very few state and local government are just posting positions saying that, oh, looking for a drone pilot for this specific thing. So at the state and local government, it's training the traditional workforce to use this technology. That's one. In the private sector side, my thoughts are that the industry that's kicking or really making an impact is just general photography and video. You have a lot of projects that come up, so people get hired. So you can, and many of these things are basically contract based. So you have a lot of service providers, that have national pilots base created, but as per projects, you can use pilots. Now, these are job opportunities for people, but again, this doesn't mean that a specific industry is going to hire a lot of people in drone pilots, because one drone can do that job. You're not going to have 100 drones flying at the same time, mapping a construction site, or maybe each company may have one person hiring. So yes, construction, energy, electric utilities, these companies are going to be looking for people. But again, a lot of them rely on using their current workforce to just get the additional training. So that's the drone situation, the job situation there. But with automation coming into the picture, I'm a little reluctant to say that there are a lot of drone pilot jobs in the industry that's going to be there, and drone delivery is also an example. There's going to be automation in that. Most of the operations that are taking place right now under the IPP and separate drone delivery are requiring just one pilot to observe, because the operations are tending to be automated. And still, FAA requires two people sometimes as per the waiver, but eventually it's one person who's like a manager, not actually a pilot also, but a manager who's supervising safety, everything. So you have drone jobs created. You created a whole bubble saying, oh, here's a $1 billion industry where you can get an opportunity, and then emerging technologies are slowly opening up or breaking the bubble and saying, okay, now you have automation, AI, you have augmented reality that you wouldn't use traditionally, but now you started using it. So now you don't even have to need an inspector to go actually to an airport to inspect an airport. You can map the airport and have an inspector sit at his home and virtually see the airport inspection. That's the type of capabilities right now. So drone jobs are like a roller coaster unless we create special use cases that are more focused on actual flying of a drone. Otherwise we're calling this as an industry, and the industry is so big right now that there's a lot of jobs going to be created.
Darshan, you brought up a couple of very good points. First, you brought up automation, how everything's becoming automated. So I'm in a hotel room in Buffalo, New York, and because I'm from Louisiana, I'm an essential worker, first of all. I should clarify that's why I'm here, and I'll tell you why in a second. But regardless, I'm confined basically to my room. So I've been ordering a lot of room service. Well, lo and behold, I opened the door last night to get my dinner. There's literally a robot sitting there, and it knows my name. It knows everything. It opens its lid. My food's there. And I pick up my food. It asked me how its service was. I gave it 5 stars. It celebrated. It said, yeah. It turned around and it went back home. It was the craziest thing. And it just got me thinking, we're really approaching the Jetsons era. I know people laughed about this or joked about this, and it may still be quite a few years away before we're actually riding in drones like they do in the Jetsons. But I mean, we have robots who are actually doing our room service now. And so you are right. This automation aspect of it is a very interesting component, and perhaps maybe a threat to jobs, perhaps not. But one thing that is key that you brought up that I do want to mention is you brought up how people who are not using drones are being trained to use drones in the private sector, and to an extent in the public sector. And I'm seeing a lot of that in the private sector as well. And this is important because when I take clients places to talk with municipalities or state government officials about bringing in drone programs, one of their biggest issues is always, isn't this going to kill jobs? Isn't this going to take away jobs? And the answer is, until we are at a place where automation is much more accessible and scalable in the United States, you can take some of these people who are doing inspections, a good bit of them, and train them to use jobs. And therein creates another class of jobs. And that's the people who come in and teach companies how to use drones, how to fly drones. I know I live along the Gulf Coast, so I know a lot of the energy, oil and gas companies down here will bring someone in-house and teach all of their staff how to use drones. And so at least for the next few years, I think maybe it's not so much what jobs are going to be created. I think it's going to be how our jobs are going to be transformed. And that's really important because so many of these government decision makers are worried about are drones going to kill jobs? And the answer is right now, they're not. No, they're not. And people evolved. I mean, we used to pay people to drive carriages that were led by horses, right? I mean, in short of resource and industry places, the vast majority of those people have been out of business now. So, and I don't mean to compare horse and carriages to drones, but the point I'm making is that people evolve. They find ways to adapt. And if you have a skill set, I think the idea is you will find a way to implement that skill set one way or another. And technological innovation should not necessarily be a job killer. And I think that's really important to stress to these people as we try and grow this industry and implement these programs across America.